A long time ago in a galaxy far, far away, it is a period of trying to find the next big property to make a major franchise. Touchstone Pictures chooses a beloved and ever-changing science fiction story pioneered by one Douglas Adams, even getting the author to write the screenplay before his tragic passing. But when author oversight is removed and a deadline looms, what happens? Don't panic. Hello there, and welcome back to 6 Degrees of Star Wars, the podcast where we explore all the ways that George Lucas's flagship franchise surrounds us, binds us, and penetrates us in the landscape of cinema. I'm your host, Sam Marchioni. Joining me today is Jasmine Garcia.
I speak for the bookworms.
Grady Smithy.
I have my towel.
Ellie McConaughey.
I'm like the human equivalent of that sixth terrible book the Artemis Fowl writer wrote.
And the person who brought us all here today, Brian Harris.
The world's about to be destroyed. There's no point getting all annoyed.
Happy almost New Year, everybody. Okay, so Brian, you won my little in-server media preservation guessing game, and this was your choice, and I have to ask, why?
You know, I realized something recently, which is that I was never exposed to Monty Python as a kid. And this is relevant, I promise. I feel like a lot of people are shown Monty Python as a kid, and I just, by a dad or their sibling or someone, and I just never was. And still to this day, I have never seen a Monty Python movie like all the way from start to finish. So my British comedy exposure were two things: Mr. Bean and this movie.
Okay.
You see a bunch of American comedy as a kid and you just kind of get used to it. And then of course you're shown Monty Python or Mr. Bean or Faulty Towers or something, and suddenly you're just like, what's this? This is I've never seen anything like this before. So I remember being shown this movie as a kid, I probably by my brother, and just loving kind of the humor and the world. And for whatever reason, this movie just sort of became like my Star Wars, my Lord of the Rings, my Star Trek, whatever your first like nerdy sci-fi or fantasy thing as a kid was, that was this movie for me. And I remember being like scared by the Vogons and laughing at why were their ships like so tall, when you zoom out from the earth. And if I've seen any movie like close to like 100 times or more than 100 times, it's probably this movie. So I've seen it, as an adult several times, of course, and my appreciation for it has just continued to grow. Jokes that I didn't get as a kid, of course, I now get. I would dress as like, because I remember like Towel Day is May 25th, so I'd make sure to bring my towel to school on that day, and then I would dress up as Arthur Dent on Halloween, of course. But it's an easy costume. You got your PJs, you got your robe, and your towel. That's it. You're Arthur Dent.
That's interesting, because as this movie defender in this chat right now, my experience of this movie was so different. I obviously didn't watch it as a kid. I was 15 when this movie came out, and I'd already read the book, and like. I was, I'm thinking, like, I was exposed to a lot of British comedies as a kid. Monty Python, bummer about that one. Faulty Towers, bummer about that one. Father Ted, bummer about Jesus Christ.
God damn it, Turf Island.
We need to quarantine it until we find out what's going on.
I don't have any proof that there's anything wrong with anyone from Yes, Prime Minister, but I'm just going to say bummer about that one preemptively.
Oh, no.
So I knew British comedy. Like, I watched a lot of it growing up. My parents were deeply pretentious, which explains me.
Oh.
And I don't know, like, I'm not in a camp where I think that this movie is fantastic. I think that part of the problem that people get so negative about this movie is they go after the adaptation. And yeah, that's fair. It's not a good adaptation of the book, but like, what is Hitchhiker's Guide at this point? It's 5-ish books.
And the book itself was an adaptation of the radio show, I know.
There's a radio show, there's a TV show with a budget of about $25. There's an
Let's
adventure
just
game.
side plug Dom Noble's whole Lost in Adaptation thing, because
Right.
the man went through a mental breakdown over it. We might as well honor it.
Right, so I don't think that there's anything theoretically wrong with taking the basic shape of Hitchhiker's Guide to the Galaxy and basically like smacking it with a hammer a few times until it fits into a basic Hollywood formula, which is what they did. And there a lot of stuff does get lost in there, but it's very well cast. I think that particular Zaphod, Marvin, Arthur, and the narrator are all just fantastic. Bummer about him. Is Stephen Fry and bummer about that one territory?
He has at least been turf adjacent, if not an actual turf, unfortunately.
Maybe, but we're not here to talk about that. So.
We are here to talk about this movie. So that's basically my defense. I think that it's not a great adaptation, but I have a copy, a leather-bound copy of all 5 of the books that Douglas Adams wrote. I think I made my opinion on the 6th book that what's-his-name wrote very clear. And I used to bring it with me to Anchorage every time I flew there to see my dad every summer. Aww. Because that way I'd know I have a book to read on the plane if the book that I chose to read on the plane turned out to be dog shit. So I don't know. I'm very fond of these books, and I think it's a funny movie on its own right. It's a middling adaptation.
So, if I may, I had an interesting trajectory with my relationship to this universe because I did, in fact, actually see the movie first, not long after it had come out, partially because I had stumbled upon So Long and Thanks for All the Fish on YouTube, and I'm like, this is hilarious. What is this? And I did see the movie. I had no previous connection to Hitchhikers before it. And I'm okay, that was okay, and pretty much forgot about most of it until I did end up trying to read the books and fell absolutely in love with it. And you're right, it doesn't really matter if it is different because that's just how adaptation works. My problem is what they changed is not like a lateral move, in my humble opinion. Brian, I am very going to be as gentle with this as possible since I know how important this is to you. My biggest problem, especially when I went to rewatch it, is why did you try to make it a rom-com and not even a very good one? I do not buy the relationship at all. The fact that it's so much of the plot is kind of a problem for me.
Great, we might as well throw in your experience / impressions of this film since nearly everybody else has gotten a turn at this point.
As previously stated, especially in the Empire Strikes Back episode, I'm old. That, however, is kind of cool in some ways because I got to watch Monty Python's original run on American public television. And Sunday nights were British comedies, and I would watch them obsessively. And I got to watch the original TV show, and I'm like, this is amazing. Oh, wait, shit, it's a book. I gotta go start reading those. I actually got to go to a book signing that Douglas Adams did, and the 3rd book in the 5-book trilogy had a line about how Belgium was the most obscene word in any language in the universe because the American publishers wouldn't let him use the word fuck. So I took my collected edition of the original trilogy radio scripts and I had him sign it, Belgium, Douglas Adams. So then when the movie came out, I was excited because I like Martin Freeman. At the time, I had a hopeless nerd crush on Zooey Deschanel. And when I heard that Sam Rockwell was in it, I'm a fan of his, so I'm like, this is gonna be great. And I loved it. And then 2017, a friend of mine who was doing angry reviews on YouTube asked me to be part of their review of The Hitchhiker's Guide to the Galaxy because they wanted a mixture of positive about the movie, negative about the movie, and I started out team movie. And then I started watching the movie, and there are certain things that I will go into later in this because I have to try to stop myself from going on rants that are too long on those. There are a couple things that I have serious beef with, but I was very anti-movie by the time that it was done. And then last night, in preparation for this podcast, I watched it for the first time in 6 years, and I'm setting my relationship status to it to it's complicated.
Well, this was the first time I had watched the movie, and I haven't really read any of Adams's books. I did watch the Dom Noble treatise on it because I'm a big fan of a lot of Dom's work. So, like, that's always a dangerous thing to do, is to watch somebody else's critique of a thing before you watch the thing yourself. And I was trying my best not to have that in my mind as I watched the movie. I waited until after I had watched the movie to revisit Dom's stuff about it, because Dom does a lot of good work, and I like hearing, you know, the stuff he includes about author trivia and whatnot. So my experience with this movie, it's mostly like, hey, what if Star Wars, but it's more surrealist? Fine. But also everybody's an asshole. Not so fine.
Oh!
You just described like 80% of British comedy there.
I know. And I also have to say that in honor of this being in Degree 3, I much more deeply relate to David Prowse now, because the first person who makes this a Degree 3 is Warwick Davis. Warwick Davis is credited as Marvin the Robot. But does anybody here really think of Marvin the Robot as Warwick Davis?
No.
Only when you stop and consider the fact that
Warwick
he's not
was
CGI.
the suit performer for Marvin, dubbed over by Alan Rickman.
One of the things that I do like about the movie, and maybe this is just because I rewatched it yesterday and I exist in the modern hellscape of 2023, but I'm like, holy shit, sets, practical effects. Henson Workshop made some Vogons for them. Like, it's an actual
Those are very impressive
movie-looking movie.
Those are very impressive creatures.
Yeah, the Vogons are great.
The Vogons look like Ralph Steadman vomited on Terry Gilliam, but in a good way.
The practical effects in this movie are second to none. I mean, like you said, you got the Vogons, you've got all those like little aliens on when they go to visit Hamakavula, and there's just some random alien in the corner doing his thing, or they're on the Vogon planet and just like a little tiny robot.
A mouse droid's deformed cousin.
Yeah, exactly.
Okay, but besides Warwick, we have Thomas Lennon, we have Jerome St. John Blake, we have Brian Herring, Lynn Robertson Bruce, Catherine Smee, Andy Heath, Mark Jeffers, Mason Ball, Mohsen Nouri, and Richard Combs, a lot of whom are creature and animatronic and puppet performers. Thomas was the voice of Eddie the Computer, and he was also in Lego Star Wars Summer Vacation as Wick Cooper. 6 Degrees of Star Wars and Nader has 2 settings. You will find one connection, or you will find a bajillion. I want to be squealing over all the cool animatronics and stuff. I kind of wish that it were in service of a movie that I liked more.
Fair.
And there are some choices that are weird. Like, I really don't get why Zaphod's heads are the way they are.
In the original book and in the TV show, the head was like the other head was on the side of his shoulder.
Yep.
But the TV show had a budget of about $25, so it looked like shit because everything in that show looks like shit. Like, that's part of its vibe.
They could have made it look good in this.
Right. I don't know if it looks good, but I think it's an entertaining. Like, honestly, I didn't watch any of the special features because I don't own it on DVD. But I feel like if I dug into this enough, I feel like I'd eventually find out it was a suggestion from Rockwell, because he's doing a very different character than the books describe.
Oh, absolutely.
A lot of this, I do think a lot of this comes down to the fact that it came out in 2005. That's one of the reasons why I like how much practical effects there were. Remember what Star Wars was doing in 2005 with practical effects?
Mm-hmm.
The prequels have practical effects in them. I don't know why people have to be such... We're not talking about that. No.
We're not talking about the prequels. I was making a joke about the over-reliance on CGI, but that was just the vibe for a lot of movies in
George
2005.
really likes playing with new toys.
Because it rhymed.
George is an experimental art house technical director who somehow became the most important children's movie maker in history.
I got a theory on why they did the head the way they did. It's just because Sam Rockwell plays Mannix so well, and that allows for it to be even more of a shock when the second head turns up, and also allows for how could Zaphod go to the party and not have the entire party be about, why does that guy have a second head?
Okay,
Let's face
that's
it.
actually really
Zaphod
fair.
Beeblebrox in this is George W. Bush on meth.
Oh, absolutely.
It said on IMDb that Sam Rockwell's influences, I think, were...
He claims Clinton, right?
Bill Clinton.
That's just a lie, man. That's just a lie.
I mean, I can
I gotta
see
find this
Clinton being an inspiration in that Zaphod seems like the kind of person who would take advantage of an intern who is way too young to be appropriately giving consent.
Okay, fair.
And also Clinton is from, like, Arkansas.
Yeah.
I
is
also
true.
feel like the way they realized
Okay.
second head is a little bit of a budget concern, because putting a reasonably good-looking second head on his shoulder and having it be there the whole movie is a huge pain in everyone's ass. It's like how
Yeah.
people complained about Tyrion's nose not getting chopped off in Game of Thrones. I'm like, yeah, because that's a ton of effort for everyone, and no one wants to do that.
That's fair. Just wanted to read this. Sam Rockwell has said in interviews that his portrayal of Zaphod was influenced by 3 people: Bill Clinton, Elvis Presley, and Vince Vaughn.
So, 2 Predators and Vince Vaughn.
Elvis?
Yeah.
But it did say
Yeah.
many viewers find a resemblance to George Bush as well.
I mean, it's
which
hard not
makes
to
sense.
think George Bush when you see idiot president and it's the aughts.
And also,
Oh, yeah.
my word is
Mhm.
president.
I mean, to be fair, this was the 2005, 80s, idiot president. 88, idiot president. 92, kind of idiot president. 2000s, idiot president. Like, the original cultural reference point for Zaphod was more Reagan than Clinton, because no one knew who Clinton was when he was writing that book at first.
Ronald
course it was
Reagan
Reagan.
ruins
Well, yeah.
everything.
That's just going to be a segment of this show now. Should we
Yeah,
delve
I've
into
already
it, I
kind of
guess?
started delving, but
Yeah, true. That's true.
Mhm.
But I will say, So Long and Thanks for All the Fish absolutely still slaps. Still a fantastic opening that promises so much.
I mean, it's very funny, but it also kind of depresses me when I think about what SeaWorld is actually like.
I mean,
Well,
yeah.
I was going to say, if you love that part, watch a movie that Esther Williams did, because that is absolutely the number at the climax of an Esther Williams movie right there.
That is true. I never thought of it that way, but yeah, it absolutely is. I've never seen like a full one, but I know the reference point enough that yeah, it basically is. That's amazing.
I do think this movie opens very, very strong. Like, everything from the opening number up until they get on Zaphod's ship is actually really good. It's really funny.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
I like Mos Def a lot, especially in this. Like,
Yes, you bet.
Arthur's a straight man, and this is basically his extended audition to play Bilbo.
Yeah.
Which,
Yeah.
whatever other problems I have with those Hobbit movies, Martin Freeman as Bilbo is good ass casting.
Oh, absolutely.
I
Yeah.
think they could have
and-
but-
changed Ford saying he was from Guildford to saying he's like from Birmingham or something. Because if I'm remembering correctly, there is a Birmingham in England, but there's also one in the United States, most
Yeah.
notably Alabama.
I think that's a line from...
It is a line from the
Yes.
books, but they're changing other stuff, so I don't know why they wouldn't change that. Because I'm pretty sure Ford was originally not black.
No.
He
Yeah, he
wasn't,
was
but they
basically
don't
supposed to
have
be.
to change that, because the entire thing with Ford is he doesn't fit in. He's supposed to be unobtrusive,
Yeah.
and he is the most obtrusive unobtrusive you can get.
Yeah.
It's like the Trevor Noah James
And-
Bond bit.
Yeah. Yeah, that's actually really astute. It's an astute
point.
observation there. But yeah, basically Prefect, in spite of the fact he doesn't quite fit in, he is also supposed to be about as quintessentially British or appear as quintessentially British as Arthur does. He's not very good at it, but that's another story. I have to say, Most Def is most definitely trying.
Yassine Bey.
I don't know if I would necessarily say he would have been my first choice acting wise, but again, most definitely trying.
For me, he was one of the most perfect casting choices.
We
Really?
should also
Okay.
point out that this is the first directing credit for Garth Jennings, and then he went on to do Son of Rambo and the first 2 Sing movies. I don't know if there's a third one coming out, but
Yeah.
Almost
That-
certainly.
maybe he's
That
not
is-
a very good director, question mark.
Quite the oeuvre.
I think that, again, we're going back to like a modern comedy where most of the jokes are just characters standing around and saying their funny things. I'll say that simply by borrowing a lot of Douglas Adams' dialogue, it feels more scripted than most of it does, but it definitely doesn't get a lot of jokes out of the visuals.
Except for that one zooming out shot from the Earth.
Oh yeah.
The Improbability Drive, we get great visual gags, but yeah.
We do, and like that's one of the things that's best realized for sure.
Well, that's more like an effect gag. I was thinking more of like jokes with the way it's edited. The Hot Fuzz guy. I'm trying to remember the name of the director. Edgar Wright. Edgar Wright is very good at telling jokes with editing or like blocking. The only real joke in Hitchhiker's Guide that is told with editing or blocking is the repeated zoom outs in with the Vogon ship, which is my favorite joke in the entire movie.
Why didn't they get Edgar Wright for this?
Because he was still starting out. I think this was before Shaun of the Dead.
Oh my god, it was.
Garth Jennings was in Shaun of the Dead.
That tracks.
Garth Jennings has a credit as the fun dead zombie. So I guess this is what you get when Garth Jennings tries to be Edgar Wright.
I guess that I presume this was in production when Shaun of the Dead came out, so they probably didn't even think of him.
Yeah, that's fair, but oh my god, now I want that more than anything in the world.
Maybe Garth Jennings just sort of saw his job as Douglas Adams passed away in 2001, and he had the script that Douglas Adams wrote, and he's like, well, I have to be faithful to what Douglas Adams wrote. So his focus was more, I'm going to put my own style on it, and more, I need to do my best job to translate Douglas Adams' words and characters to the screen.
I mean, he had a draft, and anybody who's written will tell you that often the first draft is not the final draft.
Your best.
So,
and
they had to bring in Carrie Kirkpatrick to.
I was really hoping you were about to say Carrie Fisher, and I was like,
"Oh no!
Why would you hope for that?"
No, Carrie Kirkpatrick is credited as the co-writer, who they pretty much brought in to just sort of fit Douglas Adams' first draft.
I mean, based on his filmography, it's not a bad idea, I guess.
Chicken Run is pretty good.
Peach, those would have been the two big ones. I don't know.
There are moments in this movie where I'm just like, yes, you're getting this exactly right. Like all of the little animated segments where they quote
those
directly
are fun.
from the guide. I'm like, yes, this is exactly what I'm looking for. Like, and those were again some of the few moments that I really remembered from when I first watched this movie before I even had read the book. So, but the bits in between those just fall kind of flat for me, unfortunately. The Hamakavula especially really does fall flat for me. It's just like, this should be funny. Why am I not laughing? It's John Malkovich as a comedic sci-fi villain. I should be rolling.
I didn't really laugh properly until the slap machine.
Oh, we'll get to the slap machine. Great.
So the whole thing with Pope Malkovich is one of the things that I have beef with, but Malkovich's performance is not part of that. I gotta say that one other thing that I really like about that, before I get into what I hate about that, is when he takes off his glasses, and it turns out that his glasses are also his eyes. That is an amazing visual gag, but this presents a combination of wasted opportunity and pandering to the American audience's perceived whatever that really pissed me off, because they're on the planet of the Jartravardans, who are the 50 armed creatures who were the ones who developed the aerosol deodorant before they invented the wheel. Their religion is the Great Green Arkle Seizure, where they believe that eventually there will be a handkerchief that comes and wipes away everything. We get one fucking Jartravardan in the entire section on this fucking planet side quest bullshit.
I don't even remember what Hamakavula, and I don't think it really pays off at all, except introduces the point of view god, which is a decent joke.
It's terrifying to think about, though, because they kind of end the movie like, let's go give this thing that can immediately convert somebody to your way of thinking to a religious leader.
They wanted a religious fanatic, and they're like, hey, there's a stupid religion in here. Let's take it and just give it to Malkovich. I will say, having everyone sneeze instead of say amen at the end of the prayer, that was funny.
Yes. And the bless you punchline was funny.
Yeah, it's just mainly he's there to set up Planet Side Quest #1 and also remove Zaphod's second head so they no longer have to worry about the CGI budget on that one. And sorry, I apologize. I wasn't planning on getting into this one yet, but I have boiling rage within me, and hopefully if I vomit it out now, I'll get over it and be able to move on. The Heart of Gold does not need fucking coordinates to go somewhere. That pisses me off so much. The Heart of Gold calculates how improbable it is to be where you want to go.
Yeah.
They could have just said that this cube has the calculation you need in order to figure out what the improbability of getting there is. But no.
Yeah, they got a lot of the tech wrong. Like, even that machine that senses what you're craving. And I know we promised we weren't going to go too deep into stuff that Dom has already said, but yeah, the whole joke with that machine is that it, in spite of it being all so fancy, all it really does is give you shit tea.
I do like
basically.
the toast lightsaber, though. I like the toast lightsaber.
I swear to God, I think that when she pulls out the toast lightsaber, I think it's the actual lightsaber like sound.
It looks like it. Like,
it sounds like it, yeah. I do feel like the whole subplot with Hamakavula is an interesting concept. Like, is it horrifying that they're giving this dude a gun that can, like, convert people? Yeah. This is the universe where they kill a planet of 6 billion people to make shit more convenient. Like, that's the joke. The universe is horrifying. Don't panic. But again, I feel like the movie doesn't really engage with any, like, that could be a really good satire on religion, but doesn't really engage with it in any real way.
Exactly. And, like, I'm glad you brought that up, Ellie, because, yeah, the whole point of this franchise really is joyful nihilism, basically. It's just like, yeah, most of the world, everything is just pure chaos. Nothing actually matters, so fuck it. Let's have fun with it. Again, the best moments in this movie were when they're basically just quoting directly from the book, I feel like. Because, again, yes, I agree. Adaptations should be allowed to change. But if you're gonna change it, again, at least a lateral move. And I just don't feel like they did that here.
Brian mentioned that this was based on a script that Douglas Adams wrote.
Yes.
Mm-hmm.
And then he passed, which is very sad. But it also made them kind of like allergic to going, this is shit, we gotta fix it.
And we've
like,
seen that sort of thing before.
And no, obviously I love the books, but like a lot of that stuff, I think that it was one draft away from being better. But I do like it. I do like it a lot. I think it is very... I'm being meaner than I need to be because that's the vibe of the chat. I'm sorry, Brian.
I'm sorry. Yeah, we're really trying. I'm sorry.
I was hoping that by speaking first that I might be able to sway the chat more positively, but
I am so sorry because I know how important this is to you, and I get it. If this is like the first really big sci-fi fantasy thing that you see as a child, I could definitely see how it just absolutely wins you over because it's very silly. It's very bright and colorful.
I would like to say, to balance the anger from before, that on the subject of the changes, Douglas Adams believed that every time there was a new version in a new medium of the story, something needed to be different so that you're not just paying to get the same thing again. And some of the changes that they made worked for me. Some, as previously mentioned, did not. As stupid as the romance subplot was, having the vice president of the galaxy essentially be the overly attached girlfriend, that amuses me.
They could have done more with it, but it had potential.
It is kind of funny that they don't... All of that comes just like through her character and through her dialogue, that she's this, like you said, overly attached girlfriend.
And you know that she's the bad guy because she has the black bob with the bangs.
The black... Yeah.
I will say a couple of nice things now, Brian, to try to balance this out. I'm really, really sorry. The whole Vogon sequence is pretty much almost perfect, partially because they are so well made. And yes, the whole...
Well, which one? Are you talking about when they're first on the ship or later?
I like the one where they're going to rescue Trillian and the whole bureaucracy of it all. I love it.
Yeah, no, it's hilarious.
So I just knew that's just like, okay, this is like a satire of British bureaucracy.
This is the wrong form. You need the blue form.
Yeah, made me want to scream.
It reminds me both visually and in the jokes that it's making. It reminds me a lot of Brazil.
Bummer.
And also, you gotta love how when they get to the Vogon DMV, Arthur sees the queue and he's like, I was born for this moment.
Yes.
Yes.
Could be worse, Arthur. You could be waiting to go meet Elsa and Anna.
Hey. Yeah, Yeah,
And again, going back to the practical effects, like all of those aliens are like actually there, and like one of the aliens is the original Marvin the robot from the TV show.
oh,
Much
that's
love
fun.
for them using that.
And you know what?
Yeah.
Yeah, Marvin, I wish they had provided a little bit more of the context of Marvin. But as far as performance goes, of course, it's Alan Rickman. It's hard to go wrong with
And let's
him.
give a shout out
Right?
to Warwick for managing the physicality of the
Of course.
goddamn robot suit.
Yeah.
Especially that head. That cannot have been easy.
I love the design of Marvin the robot in this because he says that he has the brain the size of a planet, right?
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, that's
So
true.
his body is just so cute because his body's like really tiny and then his head is like
Yeah.
massive.
I will say, I do wish they had gotten more into the fact that he was literally made to be your plastic pal who's fun to be with. Like, because there's a whole backstory there.
Oh,
That would have been a lot of fun.
I feel like there is a lot of backstory in Marvin that comes in the books, and they repurpose text from later in the book series and put it in this one for context. And I honestly wish they'd done more of it because there's a lot of really good bits that I feel like would have fit in the movie if they, like, again, I feel like they got kind of bogged down. Some studio note somewhere said, well, Trillium and Arthur are kind of like interested in each other for the first like third of the first book, and that's it. That needs to be our love interests, and they spend too much time on that, and that just eats up so much time.
And the worst thing is, it could have worked. The point where Trillian gets the POV gun and starts shooting at Zaphod, like that scene out of context actually kind of got to me.
It was
and I'm
pretty
just
good.
like,
Yeah.
wow,
I would like that, please.
That too. But no, what I wish is that it was attached to a love story I believed in. If this was attached to a love story I believed in, I would probably watch edits of that on TikTok for millions of times because it was so good.
This close to not liking that scene because it falls so close to show don't tell being broken. But between Deschanel and Rockwell, this is probably the best moment of performance from both of them.
Yes, easily.
Yep.
Like, there are tears in her eyes.
And I have one comment about Marvin before we get completely away from him. Marvin is what would happen if Steve Jobs made a robot and decided it needs to be depressed. He is the most depressed Apple product ever created.
I mean,
poor Marvin.
Marvin knows exactly where all his components came from, and he hates it.
Yeah, I do miss that we.
Probably.
He is all white, like an old Macintosh.
About all the diodes on his left side hurting, though.
Yeah, because that's the thing. Like, again, he was meant to be your plastic pal who's fun to be with, and to do that, they basically made him as close to a person as they could have through technology. And unfortunately, that means he knows too much, and it is very hard to be a fun and happy person if you know too much.
Well, also, Sirius Cybernetics, they decided that the way they do this is they gave each one of their robots one personality trait, and he drew the depression
And then he
card.
weaponized the depression card at the end.
He did, and that was fun. That was fun.
That scene is so good.
Oh, and so I don't forget about this, to throw out another thing that I do like about the movie, Simon Jones as the Magrathian answering machine. I was so happy when I saw that he got to be a part of this. He's the original Arthur Dent, for anyone who doesn't know, and he was was the main reason I was a fan of the original TV and radio series, and just I loved that he got to be a part of the reboot. Also, it's kind of symbolic that they give the job of the person who's trying to kill the reboot to the original Arthur. It's kind of amusing, to me at least.
I love his last line. To ensure quality of service, your death may be monitored for training purposes.
Everybody who's ever had to be on a phone tree just cursed.
As somebody who works a call center, I am sorry.
It's not your fault.
Also, how great was Bill Bellamy as the whale? Seriously.
Oh, that was so fun.
Oh my god.
That's like one of my favorite jokes in this whole franchise.
If we can circle back, because I started to talk about Slap Machine, but we didn't really get to finish Slap Machine.
I know.
Fair enough.
See, I like Slap Machine because that seems exactly what a Vogon would think of for defenses, because we get that description of like, Vogons do not think, they don't get ideas, they don't appreciate beauty, so all of that stuff would be anathema to them, and therefore they would be able to get through it fine.
Yeah, no, I definitely have to agree with that. And also, it did kind of make me think of this one bit from Looney Tunes, of all things, because there's this gangster character who kind of slaps his Mook is like, that'll teach us to get ideas. But boss, you know I don't get ideas.
Actually,
I'll see
yeah.
that you don't.
And if I recall correctly, this was one of Douglas Adams' ideas that they mined from either his notes or one of the books I never got around to reading, that the Vogons their evolution was directed to make them bloody-minded, uncreative bureaucrats. These things were there to make them do or do not. There is no think.
And it, of course, that goes back to the satire of bureaucracy and the idea that you can do horribly evil acts, but as long as you're just a bureaucrat,
as long as everything is properly filed.
Commentary.
And I want to balance out the positivity with one of the things that aggravated the hell out of me about this movie. They had one joke that was very simple and could have been done so well. They tell Arthur that his house is being knocked down in order to make a bypass. And then the Vogons show up and they tell humanity that Earth is being destroyed to make an express lane. I don't care which of the two that you go with. It needs to be the same one in both cases, to underscore the whole thing about how bureaucracy is the same, whether it's on the city level or the state level or the national level or the galactic level. They have forms. They have been given a job to do. They're going to do the job. And sorry,
That's
it's just
true.
that was
That's
the
a
thing.
fair point.
When I was watching this back in 2017, the Vogons not saying that it was a bypass was the thing that was my heel turn on this movie.
they do say these plans have been on display for the past 6.5 some odd years.
50
So
years, I think I said.
Yeah,
so
that's where they're doing the parallels exactly the same. It should have been the exact same throughout. Them not doing that is the reason why I count that as a missed opportunity. And now to go back to a positive thing that I've got about the movie. Watching it last night, I realized something for the very first time out of all the times I've seen it. When we first see Ford Prefect, he's got the grocery cart full of beer and peanuts that he then gives to the workmen so that they will take a beer and peanuts break instead of doing that.
Yes.
The reason why he's bringing that is he needs to get Arthur salts and alcohol in his system.
Yep.
And then that's why they wind up going into the pub, which they don't have to give you a reason other than that's where alcohol is. But it's just, that is a level of thought that went into it that makes the inconsistency on the bypass and the express lane thing just piss me off more.
Oh.
As I said, it's
I do love him riding the shopping cart down the road, and then Mos Def's performance in this, I think, is
by the way, he changed his name a few years back.
Oh yeah, he changed his name. Yeah, but his, just thinking about his performance throughout the movie, he's got to, act like an alien who's pretending to be a human, but and the just like his comedic acting, like when they're on the Vogon ship and he's being read Vogon poetry and he's got to act like he's hearing fingernails on a chalkboard mixed with some awful, terrible, torturous sound. And and then later on when he's drinking that drink with Zaphod, and apparently it's the equivalent of having your brain smashed out by a lemon wrapped in a gold brick.
Yep.
I don't know, his facial acting, his comedic acting, I thought was all of his comedic acting was just done very well.
My favorite
For
part,
me, he was the best
was when they showed. Like, I will say, my favorite part of his performance was when he tried to introduce himself to the car. That grin on his face. It was
thought
perfect.
They were the dominant life form.
Side note,
which makes a lot of sense.
Which is why he named himself Ford Prefect, which for the American listeners is a model car that they only had in England, and most of us only discovered was a car because of this thing.
Yeah. I will say, you know what? I realized they would have never done it because it was 2005, but I definitely would have bought an Arthur Ford romance way more than I bought Arthur and Trillian in this movie, which, side note, Arthur keeps on slipping and calling her Trisha, and he only apologized once. bad.
The first seeds of Turf Island dead naming.
They do have better chemistry, you're not wrong.
As long as we're talking about Trillian, we should address the issue that Shami brought up. Trillian was whitewashed.
Yes, she was.
If you look at the description in the book, it reads, she was slim, darkish, humanoid, with long waves of black hair, a full mouth, an odd little knob of a nose, and ridiculously brown eyes. With her red headscarf knotted in that very particular way and her long flowing silky brown dress, she looked vaguely Arabic.
Yeah.
I don't know what about that says Zooey Deschanel to the casting directors.
Nothing.
She's less whitewashed than the original TV one, but that's damning it with faint praise.
Which came first, the TV show or the book?
The radio show, and then it was a book.
Okay, so yeah, then the TV show did indeed whitewash her too. Yeah.
She was bleach
I have
blonde
to
in
assume
that.
this is some post-Hays Code anti-miscegenation ingrained into it. Like, we're still struggling to push for interracial couples in romances.
From the book description, and look, like you've said before, adaptations will change certain details, but look, I don't know what Douglas Adams meant by vaguely Arabic. Is he saying that she's Arabic, or that he's describing like the scarf and the silky brown dress and whatever 1978 idea of what an Arab woman looks like, is he trying to make the connection to that?
I assume that it's some kind of exoticism / Orientalism thing that populates so much of sci-fi. It shows up in Star Wars, it shows up in Dune, it shows up in John Carter of Mars.
But if anything, that makes the fact that you're just trying to ignore it even worse, because you could always just cast a woman of color as Trillian to kind of subvert the Orientalism of it all. There's a reason it's a Cards Against Humanity card with us guys.
I was just trying to determine if like this was Zooey Deschanel's big breakthrough, because I know it was like more or less the first time American audiences really got a hint of Martin Freeman.
So I think technically Deschanel's breakout was the year 2003 when she was an Elf.
Yeah, I've never seen Elf.
Which was also probably one of those moments where it's like, I'm sorry, how much older than you is your love interest?
You know,
I try not to throw shade on that, but Hollywood ageism continues to squick me.
And also, it's kind of weird how both of those movies involved her love interest walking in on her showering, isn't it?
Just a tad, yeah.
Little creepy.
That's a glass house I can't throw stones in. My favorite romantic movie is Carol.
What a shock. Ellie loves Todd Haynes.
It's a really romantic movie. Leave me alone.
It's okay.
Obviously, Sam Rockwell's big breakthrough was Galaxy Quest.
Oh, yeah.
A couple years earlier.
Also with Alan Rickman.
I was just kind of like wondering, like, so was this, because I feel like that was the first time I saw Zooey Deschanel, but I also didn't watch Elf. I was kind of Will Ferrelled out at that moment when that came out.
We're not here to talk about Will Ferrell.
We're not here to. So I was just curious about the cast, like, and obviously John Malkovich is a very established actor.
I mean, it was probably also a matter of, we must find more Americans to make this super appealing to Americans, and the only person that we have to keep as British is Arthur Dent, quotes Douglas Adams.
It is interesting that they went with an American. They went with an American for Trillium, because, like, she is explicitly British in the book, or at least lives in Britain.
Yeah, that is true.
But again, I try to worry less about like British people playing Americans or Americans playing British people, because I think we get too twisty about that.
I feel like it happens enough both ways that it really doesn't matter. But anyway, let's talk about Bill Nighy in this movie.
Bill Nighy the Planet Guy.
I mean, Bill Nighy, I've yet to see a bad performance from Bill Nighy.
I know he's done bad things, I just can't remember them now because I've blocked them out in my brain. I know there are bad performances from Bill Nighy.
Logically, there must be, but...
Either that or he's just been in movies I hate, like About Time. I fucking hate About Time.
I know.
I did hate About Time, but he's not bad in it.
Yeah, like, he's a great actor, and again, this is a well-cast movie overall. Like, he is very fitting for this character.
I like him a lot better than the TV Smarter podcast.
He's not bad in this movie.
He was so
and
good.
it's a rare occasion of friend Bill Nighy.
Yeah, that's
because
true.
a lot of the time he's scary Bill Nye.
That's is true. He's often playing villains, and this one he's just like, "Hey, Arthur."
The whole Magrathea sequence kind of blew my mind, and if this had been a bigger thing, you could now like I don't know how else to say it. This is like a different take on Spaceship Earth. Like if you told me, yeah, we're gonna go into Mickey's big silver ball, and inside there's a big planet workshop, I would absolutely believe you.
I do.
It really was
I
impressive.
see the vision.
I kind of love that whole sequence where Slaughterbot Fast is walking Arthur through kind of the planet building workshop.
Yeah, there's something very charming about it.
I also love the music in that sequence.
It's the best in the score, easily.
Yeah, when they're flying on the that little cart thing through space.
Gorgeous.
I know, and there's just this one moment where Arthur is just kind of like looking at the factory floor. There's this one moment when they're flying through space, and Arthur's just kind of looking at the whole factory floor and just everything that he was led to believe about science, about how the universe was created, just completely, like he's seen a lot, right? But he assumed that like how the planets came to be and how life came to be was all what science said that it is, and in just a moment he's just completely, everything is just washed away, and he's given this new evidence and he just can't believe it, and he's just in complete awe and shock. And I don't know, it was just a very fine piece of acting from Martin Freeman in that moment, and with the beautiful music and the score, it's just like
he's very good at befuddlement.
This is a potentially shit posty question, but
okay.
Given that they made the Earth Mark II in a way that all the people are there and resurrected and whatnot, does that mean all of like the climate change is also coming along with the Earth Mark II?
I'm really glad you brought that up, because one of my last notes was like, wait, you want to keep it as is? Like, Arthur, no, think about it. There's so much you could help eliminate here. You're wasting your potential here. There's so much. In all fairness,
he is kind of a dumbass.
I have.
Yeah.
I have no evidence for this other than like my instinct reading Douglas Adams, but I remain completely convinced that everything about like the planet building people is a really lengthy and kind of weird piss take of the Foundation series by Isaac Asimov.
Okay.
I think that I do feel like that's sort of what Deep Thought is. Deep Thought, of course, for the 3 people in our audience who don't know, is like the robot that declares that the answer to life, the universe, and everything is 42. And the Foundation is about a dude who like figures out a kind of math that lets him predict the future, basically. So I remain completely convinced that this is him making fun of Isaac Asimov.
It wouldn't surprise me.
Tracks.
That makes a lot of sense.
But I have no evidence for that. So I do
love the design of Deep Thought. Like the computer with its head slightly tilted, resting on its head, like, what?
Yeah, I do love that.
Confirm, people who've read the books confirm or deny this for me. So the mice being the like creators of the universe is a thing from the books, but in the books they basically like realize they can't get a real answer to it and just like we'll just make some bullshit up. Am I wrong?
In fact, they decide the whole "how many roads must a man walk down?" quote, the blowing the wind reference. That is something they come up with. It's actually not like this big old "I'm about to die" climax. They just kind of walk off, and it's just like, yeah, we'll just say that. There's a lot that they could talk about that on the talk shows.
Yeah, there's no need to squish them. They're like, okay, we've got some convincing bullshit that we can make bank from. Okay, fine, let's do this.
Which, I mean, that is kind of the premise of megachurches, isn't it?
Oh god, it's bad enough we're giving Humakavola the point of view gun. Now we are also theoretically letting these mice run around to spread a potentially false gospel.
That's in the book. In the movie, I think Arthur kills them.
Yeah. And it's very unceremonious.
Yep, that's something that bothers me about it too. Like, again, I understand adaptations require change. But the problem is, this is one that really does not fit the tone of this universe at all. Like, the whole, oh yeah, we defeated the bad guys, we're good to go, happily ever after.
Which brings us back to lack of faith in the American audience, in my opinion. But if the bad guy doesn't get squished, how can it be a movie?
Revenge of the Sith wouldn't have come out at this point, but Attack of the Clones definitely had, so it definitely kind of feels like at least some of this was constructed, and I'm not saying this was Douglas Adams doing the construction, but I think, like, the people afterwards were kind of looking at the prequels and being like, okay, how do we avoid these? Well, we'll avoid plot holes by making sure all the plot threads are wrapped up nice in a neat little bow at the end. And we won't get complaints about the CGI because we'll rely more on practical effects. And we won't have one of our two potential love interests be a mass murderer, and actually being a mass murderer will get you dumped.
In all fairness, it worked the same way in the original.
Yeah.
There is one character who's unintentionally a mass murderer when Zaphod signed the order to just have Earth
That's
destroyed.
what I'm talking
that's
about. That's why
quite sad.
Trillian dumps him.
But they gave him the moral out of he didn't know that's what it
That
was.
and the weird lesson of you need to settle for nice guys.
And the irony there is that by not choosing to have climate change be undone, Arthur's killing even more people on Earth.
Exactly. Thank you. And again, if it was maintaining the whole nothing actually matters, so just don't panic and try to have fun with it. If they had maintained that tone through more of this, I could almost be okay with it. If they were making it, we're not going to actually solve any of the world's problems with this golden opportunity. If they had made that a joke, I wouldn't mind so much. But no, it's just, status quo is maintained. We're good.
Arthur Dent is not a hero. He's just a guy.
And I get
He's
that.
just
I do.
A guy. He's just a normal. You're expecting him to make these grand changes, but he's just a guy. He's just his biggest arc is not being so afraid of traveling, I guess, and going on adventures.
And see, that's another adaptational issue that I don't think was a lateral move, because that's not really Arthur's thing at all. Like, I get it, they're trying to give him a character arc, but I don't know if that was the best choice for it.
It's a very Martin Freeman character arc. Like, hey, do you want to watch a movie where Martin Freeman is this kind of schlubby nobody who gets dragged onto a wild adventure with weird people, and at the very end he learns that, yeah, I am an adventurer, let's do more.
What
movie am I talking about?
The question, the ultimate question.
I mean, the ultimate question's a joke.
What is the ultimate question?
Like, that's the
Maybe
joke.
the ultimate question is the joke from Monty Python, the one that they had to translate in German.
There's a bit in the opening bit, the foreword to my copy of Hitchhiker's Guide, where Douglas Adams, he basically says there's no question. He never, the joke of 42 is that it's such a mind-numbingly simple answer to life, the universe, and everything. But there's no, like, again, I think it's just one of those things that I think makes more sense just as a punchline, what's the answer to life, the universe, I think 42.
I'm just gonna answer all questions with 42 from now on. Maybe I'll come across something.
Yeah.
I mean, yeah. I also just love how the number 42 has just kind of permeated sci-fi and media, and every time you see it, you're just like, I know what you're talking about.
Yeah.
It even got to Major League Baseball. The answer to life, the universe, and everything is Jackie Robinson.
A case could be made there, Sam.
A case could be made there.
And that movie is a degree too.
It is. I love that movie. R.I.P. Chadwick Boseman.
Yeah, it's a fantastic movie.
Also, we were talking about Deep Thought earlier, and if you kind of pause it, you see that Deep Thought isn't just like a giant head. There's also like a little body, and she's just like...
They like big heads and little bodies in this movie.
I would have liked it even better if she could have done like a sarcastic blink at them.
Oh, that would have been fun. And also, it just occurred to me, if this had come out at a better time, the Funko Pops, though.
The Funko Pops, absolutely.
Marvin
and Deep Thought Funko Pops abound.
If the movie had been more successful, we would still be getting Funko Pops of Marvin Deep Thought.
And then a Marvo Funko Pop would be your plastic pal who's fun to be with.
Exactly. There you go. Speaking of Marvin briefly, the scene at the end when the Vogons are shooting at them and then Marvin gets hit. Of course, as a kid that was so sad just seeing the light drain from his eyes. But then he stands up and shoots them. But for a moment you really think that like Marvin is dead, and it's a very sad scene because he's complaining throughout the whole movie, of course, because he's manically depressed. And then he's just killed for a moment.
Yeah.
And he's like, now I have a headache.
It is kind of a very Disney thing, though, to have that kind of a fake out death.
It's also very much a Douglas Adams thing because he keeps killing Marvin and have him survive, much to Marvin's displeasure.
But that's the thing, they didn't even make that into a joke, really, other than, yeah, I have a headache, but also
Yeah, they really
he
should
almost got what he wanted. I guess they thought that would be too dark for an American audience.
Which brings us back to lack of faith, etc.
I don't want to be mean to American audiences, but do you blame them?
I'm sorry, that article going around about how musicals keep not getting advertised as musicals because test group audiences hate musicals, and I'm like, sorry, test audiences are the worst thing. I hate them.
Test audiences are the worst thing, but I don't want to like be too mean to American audiences because we go see what is advertised. If you see 4 movies in theaters a year, you are a heavy theater goer.
That's crazy to me.
It strikes me as odd that, especially in 2005, outside of like Lord of the Rings, I can't think of too many movies that were big hits in the early 2000s that I really think that highly of. Maybe it's just because that's what was available, but this was the era of like the
2002 was when Chicago won Best Picture.
My point is just that like this was the era of those Fantastic Four movies that we all remember so extremely fondly.
Sure.
Yeah.
I don't remember the name. I think they're just Jessica Alba's movies, frankly. I think she's the star. That's interesting.
God, that poor woman.
God.
I guess my point is that, like, as much as I wish filmmakers would respect American audiences more, Barbie and Oppenheimer making a ton of money is respecting American audiences gets you punished more often than it gets you rewarded.
And of course now we live in streaming hellscape algorithm bullshit. And if we're getting philosophical, maybe we need to ask a different question to life, the universe, and everything. Is the Force with it?
I have some thoughts.
Go for it, Brian.
Are they deep thoughts?
Deep thoughts. Like I said in the beginning, it was a very big movie for me in my childhood. And for whatever reason, I just didn't feel a strong desire to look into the other works of The Hitchhiker's Guide to the Galaxy. I think I tried reading the book like once as a kid, but this movie is just kind of the universe for me. Now, that I realize that's not the case for everyone. I mean, Jazz, you said that you watched the movie and it led you to seek out the books.
Not quite. We'll get more into that. Like, it took us several years for me to read the books, to be honest. So
the point being that sometimes you kind of need that palatable gateway to a franchise that you might not otherwise have seeked out, right? And we need that as American audiences, as a culture, because for whatever reason we just don't seek out international stuff. I just wanted to say that to begin with. So is the Force with it? And here's the other thing too, is I think, as we said, Douglas Adams always wanted changes to it every time it became a new medium, a book or a TV show or a movie. And so here's what I'm getting to. I just don't think you can approach The Hitchhiker's Guide to the Galaxy in the same way that you approach other franchises, whether it be Star Wars or Harry Potter or I don't know, whatever your particular nerddom of choice is, whatever your particular fandom of choice is. It's a silly comedy kind of franchise about whales falling to their deaths and bowls of petunias, and I just you can't be too purist with it. as long as the spirit of Douglas Adams is there, I think there is something worthwhile. And that's why I say that the Force is with it, because it has so many of the traits and the quotes and the personalities that Douglas Adams brought to the radio show and to the books and to the TV show. So, and like Jazz said, like with adaptations, there needs to be changes, and that's okay. And for me, it works for me. I enjoy it for what it is. I don't get bogged down in the details of what it could be or what the missed opportunities were, whatever, because I appreciate it. I appreciate what they gave me, and I appreciate how it, opened my mind to a different universe and a different franchise. So anyway, those are my rambly thoughts about this movie.
And that's very fair. I love that this was that for you. I really, really do, Brian. I want to make that very clear. And yes, again, it's not even so much I am bogged down in the adaptation, but for me, between the kind of weak love story and the moments they did try to kind of do something new and it just didn't land for me, I guess what frustrates me the most is that you can see that they really were trying so hard and just could not quite stick the landing. And I can see what they were trying to do and what could have been great on the inside. So for me, alas, in spite of best efforts, the Force was not with it.
For me, and this is probably not going to be a huge shock to anyone after I have argued both for and against the movie, on the question of is the Force with this one, I'm going to abstain. And if anyone wants to tell me I have to say yes or no, all I have to say to that is only Sith deal in absolutes. If you haven't seen the movie, or if it's been a while since you've seen the movie, watch it, make up your mind for yourself. Because ultimately, regardless of what side we come down on, you, the individual audience member, are the one that decides whether it works for you. And so maybe you'll hate it, maybe you'll love it, maybe you'll wind up like me and you will have parts that you both love and hate. But just go, experience it, make up your mind.
Okay, that's 1 yes, 1 no, 142. Ellie?
I'm also going to go with only a Sith deals in absolutes. I think it's a very flawed movie. It can coast by, I mean, what's its runtime? Like 100 minutes? I think that it's short. It's got good energy. In the context of being a movie, it's functional. In the context of being like a good Douglas Adams movie, it's okay. It's a worse adaptation than Dirk Gently, but it doesn't have Max Landis on it, so I'll take it. That's what I got. That's the best that I got.
Honestly, I started this out leaning towards no, but I don't know, I've kind of settled into a 42 as well. And maybe it is the whole logic of Sith deal in absolutes, but this did make me genuinely laugh in a couple of places, and there were places where I was genuinely inspired by it, and it also made me rethink if I was right to say the Force wasn't with Empire Strikes Back for me.
Really?
Maybe it's because I was watching this for the first time, but this provoked a stronger reaction in me at times than Empire Strikes Back did.
Whoa.
And because I don't know how to handle that right now, I'm just gonna say 42.
When you get so used to defending an opinion, it can you can feel stronger about it than it deserves, which I feel like might have happened a little bit with your Empire Strikes Back opinion. Because I don't feel like I'm called upon to defend The Hitchhiker's Guide to the Galaxy is an okay movie very often. I don't think that's a absurdly contentious opinion, and most people don't care. Whereas I feel like when you are probably called upon to defend, you don't like The Empire Strikes Back a lot. So I think that makes it an opinion that you feel stronger about. I don't have super strong feelings either way about Hitchhiker's Guide movie. It's fine.
To respond to Jazz's point, yes, there is a lot of effort in this. For me, I appreciate the effort that they did put in. The fact that the time code at which Deep Thought gives her answer to the life, the universe, and everything is 42 minutes into the movie, that takes effort. And that's the kind of humor that, like, only a director who really cares about the work that they're adapting can make happen. And in regards to Sam and Grady and Ellie all saying 42, I think, what is the message that the Hitchhiker's Guide to the Galaxy franchise tries to impart? Like, the world is chaos, and you just kind of have to have fun with it. And I think that that's also goes back to what I was saying in my intro, which is the world's about to be destroyed. There's no point in getting all annoyed. Which is that, like, sometimes you just have to, you know, yes, you could get bogged down in the details, and I already went into that. But, like, if you laughed, if you enjoyed it, if there are things about it that you liked, I think if it, you know, tried to give you a good time at the movies and it succeeded somewhat, that to me is a worthwhile endeavor.
For sure.
It's like, don't worry about it. It's fun.
I'm not. I'm just going to get all of that from things I like better, and that's okay too.
Yeah, exactly.
Who has Pluggables?
Follow me on B Harris Film on Instagram.
I got a Twitter, LSR42. I got a Letterboxd, which I think is also LSR42. Yep. I got a Tumblr, Football in Tuxedos with dashes between each of the words.
As always, you can find me on Twitter, Tumblr, and TikTok at Faye Riviera. And I have the sister podcast of this here podcast, Any Retelling, the podcast where we explore all the ways all tales are made new. By the time this episode drops, we'll have gone into all of our holiday season picks, and we'll be going into Public Domain Day, where we're basically going to be talking about all the things that have gone into the public domain once New Year hits. Woohoo!
Grady, what's your recommendation?
I am going to break with my usual pattern. I have two things. The first one is I can be found on Twitter as SnakeBitCat. If you love the movie, come tell me why. If you hate the movie, come tell me why. I have a need to watch you argue with each other and eat popcorn. Also, to go with something closer to my usual pattern, where I plug something that is not the thing that discussed in it, but is connected. If you haven't listened to the original radio series, go listen to the original radio series.
Completely contradict Grady. If you don't like the movie, don't come tell me why. Same with if you do like the movie. I cannot deal with people arguing in my comment sections. Leave me alone.
That's why I invited them to come to my Twitter and not yours.
As for me, I will ask that you keep the spirit of Star Wars alive by supporting artists through the Entertainment Community Fund, and by taking action to support anti-imperial and anti-colonial movements across the globe, partially by using links provided below, and by taking action in your community. And you can find me on the wider internet as La Femme Fictionale, including on YouTube, Twitter, and Tumblr, where you can also find the blog for this show. Our theme music is provided by Refractory Period, the two girls' one-beat synth-pop sensation. You can follow them on Instagram at Refractory Period the band. To further support this podcast, please subscribe to us on your platform of choice, leave reviews, consider joining Patreon, and share with your friends to boost our visibility. And now it's time to turn to the Chance Cube to decide where our journey takes us next.
How did you get a 42 on a 6-sided die?
That's a 6. That's a 6.
That's a 6?
That's
okay.
6.
It's a 6, which means next is the lure.
Yes!
Yay!
We will see you in the new year to talk about the lure. Until then, stay safe, stay strong, stay beautiful, and may the Force be with you.